This was pre-planned. This whole propaganda, censorship, really, I don't know how else to say it, information warfare, psychological operations strategy that we've all been subjected to for the last 3 years. And Jill, in the frame of when this happened, was able to grab these stories that had been posted in these various organs that we now call corporate media or state-controlled media, like the Washington Post and the New York Times, that clearly demonstrated that this was highly coordinated, and what we had just experienced was at the absolute front end, the tip of the spear, or as they like to say, the bleeding edge of the events and the strategy that would then be deployed against the entire world in a harmonized fashion. We have all been subjected over the last 3 years to military-grade psychological operations that were using technology developed for offshore conflicts. And they have been deployed against the citizens of virtually the entire Western world. And as Epoch Times is exquisitely sensitive to, these are the technologies and strategies that are central to the ability of the Chinese Communist Party to maintain control in its information battle space. And we've now had this deployed against us. We're now seeing the documentation on a daily basis released to us by Twitter of this intense collusion between the US government, tech, and corporate media. But for sure, the first kind of radicalization event for Jill and I in our stepwise progression of becoming increasingly disenchanted with the government and what was being done to the citizens, and increasingly attuned to the fact that they are breaching guardrail after guardrail in terms of ethics and the norms of drug development, bioethics, biodefense, pharmaceutical development. All of that has been disregarded in a rush to advance a technology platform that just serendipitously happens to be the one that I played this key role in back in 1989, but has now been perceived as supporting multiple agendas, including convincing a skeptical population that historically has been very wary of genetically modified organisms to allow themselves to become genetically modified organisms. I mean, in a way, you have to admire the technical prowess that has been on display in a global way in this deployment. Is it 10 billion or 13 billion in the United States alone that was employed in this, what else can you call it, Psyops campaign to get people to accept products which are neither safe nor effective and which have not met traditional standards, are not licensed, fully licensed. They're available under this special clause of emergency use authorization. And yet the government felt that it was acceptable to deploy these military-grade technologies against all of us to coerce, compel, and mandate that we accept an unlicensed product that turns out to not be safe nor effective.
You can sort of imagine something like this happening, on a national scale. But it's very hard to imagine, I think, for a lot of people, something like this happening on this global scale. Everybody speaking with the same talking points, the same vision, and oblivious. And this is the hard, the really difficult part, to the many questions around whether it's the lockdown policy early on or the genetic vaccines and the harms associated with them. And it can be hard to fathom.
Can I respond to that? Because I want to loop back to something you said earlier in your history, your personal story, having to do with your difficulty in coming to grips with the, how else do we call it, fundamental evil of organ harvesting in the CCP and the meaning of that. I think as I've tried to wrestle with this and with people's reflexive revulsion and unwillingness to even allow these discordant thoughts to come into their mind, the possibility that these things might be happening in this way, whether it's organ harvesting or it's the darkness of what appears to be the emergence of a pharmaceutical corporatist global centralized state. I think it is a testimony to people's intrinsic goodness. It demonstrates that most people really believe in these fundamental ethics that we could call Judeo-Christian, or there's a number of other words that we could use around this, but the belief system that there actually is right and wrong, that there are ways that civilized people should behave. And to confront the possibility of something so evil, where people are willing, government officials, or who is the puppet master? I have no idea. Or is this just a swarm emergent phenomena? I don't have enough data to disambiguate that, but I do know that this reflexive reaction of people like yourself, in which it's hard for you to even grapple with the possibility of such darkness as a globally coordinated propaganda campaign, harmonized, that involved, just as one example, as I just learned from my trip to Austria that I've just came back from yesterday, that involved massive amounts of capital being deployed to essentially buy off artist influencers across the world in a harmonized, simultaneous fashion. That, my friends in Vienna, when I was there, were complaining all of the musicians and the artists and influencers in the arts in Vienna, one of the world's capitals of the arts, were functionally all bought off. They all received money at the outset in order to compel them, coerce them, whatever language we want to use, to endorse these products. Encourage whatever the language. And this is another point I want to make. Language really matters, as Orwell so clearly pointed out in his writing. And we have, not only have we been subjected to this barrage of coordinated propaganda, we've been subjected to a barrage of intentional manipulation of our very language to support this initiative and this agenda. How do we recover from this? How do we recover our innocence? How do we move to a world in which we can trust one another? In an environment in which every single person needs to second think whether or not this person or that person is controlled opposition, where there's always that doubt placed into your mind, where you have to approach every transaction with a modicum of suspicion. How can we form community? How can we form trust? Because in my experience, with decades with clients, you have to give trust in order to get trust. People will not trust you if you don't trust them. It's a reciprocal relationship. It's very subtle in human interactions. And if we're now forced into this environment by these chaos agents, let's call them, these entities that are exploiting this psychological information warfare battlefield towards whatever their objectives are. And I don't think either of us really know what the end point is.